Maajid Nawaz, a former extremist himself who now speaks out against violent radical Islam with the Quilliam Foundation. Maajid, first of all, your thoughts when you saw these crowds tonight all over the world standing up in defiance of this horrific act?
Anderson, I'm very proud of the French people at this moment. If it's true that there were 10,000 out on the streets despite the clear and present danger, then it's truly a courageous act and is the beginnings of the sorts of counter-narratives we will always speak about. It's very important for everyone to make a distinction, as has happened in this case actually, between criticizing an idea, any idea, including my own religion, Islam, which is an idea at the end of the day, and picking on individual Muslim people. The former is called freedom of speech. The latter is called anti-Muslim bigotry. And it's the former that this newspaper magazine was engaged in. It was simply scrutinizing and satirizing an idea, as it did with all other ideas. And so it's a matter of principle that people stand together, including Muslims, standing with non-Muslims across Europe on this principle of free speech. Why is it so important? Because in democratic societies, as we know, law, policy, opinion is formed by speech, because that is our weapon. Democratic societies are stable. We don't resort to violence for change. So freedom of speech is our lifeblood. And if that is threatened, then that's the fundamental pillar of these societies.
Christopher Dickey, I mean, France has seen terrorism before, even in the 70s, Algerian terrorists fighting here based on France's involvement in Algeria. Nothing like this, though, for quite some time.
No, not for a long time. I mean, the French have a fairly high tolerance for pain. They can send their soldiers abroad and have them die, and the country doesn't get terribly upset about it. They can have terrorism here to a certain extent, and life goes on. There was a bombing in the Saint-Michel metro and RER station back in '95 that killed a lot of people.
They've had a number of attacks really in the last several weeks. Two people driving vehicles into crowds of pedestrians.
Attacks, crazy sort of lone wolf, deranged person attacks. This is different because so many people died, because it was targeted against the press, against the idea of freedom of speech, because the people who are doing the shooting seem to have been so skilled at what they were doing. Not just some deranged guy who pulled a shotgun off the wall, but people with Kalashnikovs that are hard to acquire in this country and who knew how to use them very clearly, indicating that they may have had training someplace else or even in the French army. We don't know.
Maajid, it's interesting. I've heard from some people on Twitter who said, you know, this magazine was being provocative. They were, you know, angering people. They were publishing these cartoons, which are obviously pouring salt on wounds. To that, what do you say? To those people, particularly on this day, what do you say?
Well, what I'd say to those people is that the problem here is well and squarely lies at the feet of people who decide that a way to bring about change in democratic societies is through murder and bloodshed. They are the problem, not journalists, certainly not satirical cartoonists, and we have to be consistent at the end of the day. You know, I'm a Muslim, we come from a Muslim community, and we are very critical of Western or American foreign policy. I've been very critical personally on the invasion of Iraq. In fact, I oppose it from my own, from a jail cell as a political prisoner in Egypt. I've been critical after the torture report was released from the United States. So if I've got the right, and if other Muslims have got the right, to criticize British or American foreign policy, or French foreign policy in this instance, if we've got the right to criticize the practice of rendition to torture, then likewise everyone else has also got the right to criticize everything else. And if we, frankly, if we find that provocative and insulting, then we also have freedom of speech. We can stand for election, we can elect others that agree with us, and we can campaign through the democratic process. We must never accept that in such circumstances, the problem are the victims who have been murdered this day. No, they are not the problem. The problem are a bunch of people, bigots, theocratic fascists, who are so insecure, who believe in a God so great. Well, if that God is so great, then I'm sure that that God, Allah, can look after himself and doesn't need these ill-educated theocratic fascists to murder people in his name. And all that actually does achieve is what we've seen in the centre of Paris today, and I hope continues, and that is defiance in the face of such threats.